Okay. Today will go down as the record for the most attempts at doing a live feed that I've ever done. And if you're still following along, if you're still hanging with me, thank you so much for that. And if you're not, I don't blame you. I think I've been kicked off the internet like 5 times. So this is my 5th live feed. We have the Patreon breath party in just about 20 minutes. So I've got 20 minutes to answer some questions. And I honestly think I may just go ahead and schedule another time to do one of these just so that everybody can be here whenever I'm answering the questions, because I wouldn't blame everyone for not listening to this particular one, because hey, why not? It probably would be maybe it's going to fall off, but I think it's streaming now and I'm in a new location, so we're going to try this. All right, so so first of all, when it comes to snoring, I was talking about this in one of the previous feeds, but I think what I'm going to do, I'm just going to talk about it today for a few more minutes until we get to the Breath Club Zoom session, but I think I'm going to talk about it another time too, because the connectivity issues were just ridiculous, and I don't know. I'm at a different location. It seems like I'm having good connection here, so I don't know what the deal is in my home studio. Having said that, when it comes to snoring, there is some interesting persistence. Thank you, Papa Geek. I appreciate you. We got to be persistent, right? So okay, let's get to it. Let's talk about these topics, and then we're going to get into the Breath Club. The Breath Club, we're going to have a really awesome breathing session, and this is to celebrate the release of the book. And so, of course, there would have to be some kind of connectivity issues on that day. The book release is October 31st. Yes, Halloween, my friends. That's when the book comes out. So anyway, let's talk about snoring. Now, some of the things that are interesting about snoring, of course, we talked a little bit in the previous feed about how mouth breathing can lead to a proclivity for snoring. It doesn't necessarily make you into a snorer, but it certainly increases your likelihood of having any kind of upper respiratory or just any kind of respiratory issue, primarily because you're inhaling a lot of irritants, and it's likely to cause inflammation, which will reduce the size, literally the size. It's a physical thing that happens that, okay, you're more likely to have snoring issues. The other thing is kind of interesting. There's a lot of people who theorize that it is the muscular tone of the larynx and the pharynx. So basically, all of these muscles that we use in our throat, there is a theory that when we get older, we let them atrophy. And as a result, we have more issues with snoring. We have more issues with sleep apnea, even as a result of that. And there was research done in the year 2000, and then later on in the year 2013, that showed that 20 minutes a day of singing. So this is very interesting. If you like to sing, I like to sing. So I thought, well, hey, this is really cool. So 20 minutes a day of singing was enough to, in some cases, completely reduce snoring down to bare minimum. And in some people, even reduce their issues with sleep apnea. So if you are into singing, and even if you're not, 20 minutes a day, that's an album, right? What's your favorite album? Like, I'm a big Pearl Jam fan. Soundgarden. I don't think I could sing any of the Soundgarden songs because they're way up high. They're way too high. Maybe, I wonder if Chris Cornell ever snored. I don't know. But maybe he did, maybe he didn't. He definitely was working the vocal cords. But basically, when it comes to singing, there is a shown connection. Now, there needs to be more research done. There's only been 2 studies that I could find that were linked to the benefits of singing and the reduction of snoring. But hey, if you already like to sing, there's an excuse. sing in the shower. 20 minutes a day, that's quite a bit of singing. So you're gonna need to have a little bit of endurance there, but you are rebuilding muscle. In the studies, they showed that it took about 3 months to of 20 minutes of singing a day to see a major reduction in snoring. But that's a pretty awesome thing, especially if you like to sing anyway. I'm a big proponent that singing is just a part of being a human being. And if you're not singing, and if you're not dancing, and if you're not laughing, if you're not telling stories, then you're missing out on what it is to be a human being. These are elements of being a human being that are just foundational. So I this has been a weird day of live streaming for me because I've just had terrible luck with my internet. But if you've caught the different parts, I guess the episodes of this last hour, we've talked about mouth breathing. So mitigate your mouth, reduce or just eliminate mouth breathing. We've talked about, of course, the benefits of nasal breathing for snoring. We've talked about singing now. And then lastly, positioning. Of course, well, we also talked about, hey, if you smoke, don't smoke. Also, anytime you're using a sedative, something that's a heavy sedative. So Papa Geek, you and I, we like our beer. And hey, I'm not going to stop drinking beer, but it is more likely that you're going to snore if you have a beer or multiple beers, or maybe you went down to the brewery and decided to have a flight or two. You wanted to taste a lot of beers. There's nothing wrong with that. However, you're more likely to snore anytime you ingest higher amounts of sedatives, any kind of sedative. You're relaxing those muscles, and as a result, you're more likely to snore. I will also say that for me, if I do snore, it's typically on a you sleep on the couch when you drink more than 3 beers in the evening. Happy wife, happy life. Amen to that, brother. But I myself, I also find that just if I'm incredibly exhausted, right? So the more exhausted you are, the generally the more likely I am to snore myself. So keeping up on your sleep, really being good to yourself, these are all things that are going to help. Obviously, we've all heard, people may or may not have heard about sleeping on your side. That typically can help reduce snoring, although some people can still snore when they're sleeping on their sides. A lot of people don't realize that it's actually their pillow. So it's an odd angle. They've got an odd angle that they're sleeping on. So finding a pillow that is more conducive to your breathing is also something that a lot of people find to be very helpful. I'm going to move on, and I'm going to do this live stream again another time. But hey, while we're here, let's hang out. I'm going to answer the other questions, and we'll I need to do more live streams anyway. So also, I'm doing a live stream on the 31st to celebrate the release of the book, The Language of Breath. So if you haven't ordered your copy, make sure to order your copy. Okay, so we've talked about that. It's kind of piecemealed. I've talked about it, but thank you for following along. If you've been following the breadcrumbs of these last videos, I appreciate you. The next question is, why can't I think when I'm nervous? So it was a longer email from Connie. I appreciate your email. Thank you so much, Connie, for that email. And it was basically just saying, hey, I've noticed, especially in the past week, I've been under a lot of stress and I cannot seem to think clearly. All of the things that I normally am able to do, I feel like I'm almost paralyzed. What's with this? Why does this happen? And I'd like to also give you, Connie, I'd like to also give you some ways to mitigate that as well. So one of the things that we have to understand is when we're under stress, when we start to have that stress response, what happens is we actually start to shut down our prefrontal cortex. That is the part of your brain that is responsible for higher order thinking, critical thinking. And what happens so often is that we don't realize that we're allowing ourselves to get hyper stressed. So how breathing can interface with this is pretty it sounds like it's simple for a lot of people, but it is nuanced. What you need to do is 2 things. One is to try to learn what it feels like to become slightly stressed. Now, I know that might seem a little weird to say that. But what we want to do is we want to pick up the signals before they turn into screams, right? We want to hear the whispers before it's a siren. And so what you're going to want to do is just in everyday life. And I know right now it sounds like you are in a very stressful time, but this is, I'm going to give everybody a little bit of advice. And whenever you're out of this stressful time, it's something to remember. So try to pick up on those subtle stress signals before they get out of hand. And you can use pretty simple stuff. I mean, when it comes to breath work, there's a million different things you can do, but I'm a big fan of course, obviously I describe a radically different way of looking at breath work in the language of breath, but it just for a little pointer or a little tip, something that works for pretty much anybody is to do maybe something like box breathing multiple times in a day and just make that into a habit. And what that does is it starts to build. You kind of have a snowball effect so that you're just a more relaxed person just throughout the day. And the thing is, so often it's very difficult to pick up the whispers before they turn into screams. And so what you're going to do is just assume, hey, 3 times a day, I eat 3 meals a day, maybe, or I do this. So 3 times a day, I'm going to do maybe 2 to 5 minutes of box breathing. And that's really what it takes. A lot of people they'll either want to do like a 15 to 20 minute breathwork session where it's heavy, intense, like circular breathing, things that are incredibly blissful, or nothing. or they just want to, if I do box breathing, maybe I just do it like 5 times and I'm done. The way it really works is that for the vast majority of breathing techniques, you have to do it for a certain amount of time. Usually it takes about 2 to 5 minutes before you start to notice the results. Yes, even every single breath you take does send a message to the unconscious. The unconscious sends a message back through the autonomic nervous system. You start feeling sensations, all these things. But that's a very nuanced process. And for you to feel a pronounced change, you're generally going to need 2 to 5 minutes. In those moments of intense stress, remember that there's a lot of other things you can do besides just breath work. One of my favorite things to do is to take a walk and to affect label. So affect labeling is simply putting into words how you feel. So I feel anxiety because I am not sure what Joe is going to tell me about the thing I sent him in an email. I feel anxiety because I think that I sent it out with a little too much anger in my tone, and I wish I could unsend that email, but it's too late. I feel nervousness because I feel regret, because all of these things are good. Getting them out, and it's not just woo-woo nonsense. This is like well-documented science. It's called affect labeling. You can look it up. So those are 2 things that I would do to try to mitigate the stress. Connie, it sounds like you are in kind of just a stressful, what I like to call a stressful season of life, where it's kind of chronic, right? You wake up and you're already panicked. You go to bed and you can barely get to sleep. So in those kinds of cases, you want to continuously nurture the positive inner relationship that you have with the unconscious, because that is the biggest thing that's working against you, is this discord and that's a discord within yourself. So anyway, that's what I would recommend for you. I've only got 5 minutes before our Zoom session. If you're in the breath club, I'll be opening up the Zoom session. Actually, I need to open that up really soon, but let's talk real quick about athletic breathing. I had a question about specifically weightlifting, but I generally get athletic breathing questions. And so I want to just basically, I'm just going to give some real basic stuff to think about while I open our Zoom. Let's see. This has just been a crazy day. So the most important thing is to breathe. Okay. That's especially important when it comes to weight training, because that's typically the thing I see the most people stop doing. The weight training apneas are awful, and it will have a big problem. It will cause you to have a big problem in your, when it comes to your breathing, or when it comes to your overall performance. So one of the things that I would highly recommend you do is just try to focus on regular, constantly breathing, even if it's in and out through the mouth. I know everyone wants to say, hey, don't breathe in and out through the mouth. It's okay. It's better than not breathing at all. When it comes to breathing while you are doing athletic sports and things like that, there's a lot of talk that I need to talk to you guys about that a little bit more. A lot of people focus on nasal breathing only. And the biggest thing I want to say is that there is never, at least in my research, there's never a case when it's like you do this is the only thing you do and there's no other option. It's just this is the only option you have. When it comes to breathing, there is a time to breathe through the mouth. There is a time to breathe through the nose. I'm going to cut this short. I'm going to do another one of these because my internet connectivity was just awful today. I'm going to switch over to the Zoom. So if you're in the Patreon club, meet me over at the Zoom. We're going to do some breath together. All right. Thanks so much for putting up with my internet connectivity today, and I'll see you next time.